So let us discuss about incremental import. So far we have been importing data from existing tables into HDFS. Whatever data is there in the source, we are just copying using Sqoop import. But in the actual project, one of the key factor is we will not be able to get the entire data from all the tables on daily basis and load into the target tables with any solution. It's not practical at all. If there are bigger tables, we might have to do the initial load up to certain date, and then after that we have to capture the delta which is already being copied versus which the rows which are added newly, and then we have to perform the copy of that delta into the target which is Hadoop or HDFS in this case. So that is what is incremental import means. We just need to capture the delta and load only the modified records. So when it comes to capturing the delta, since the last load, we might have inserts, we might have updates, and we might have deletes. And if there is an insert on the source database, we have to insert the record on the target database or HDFS, whatever it is. If there is an update, we have to at least capture it as an update. If there is a delete, we should know that there are records deleted. So that being said, to inserts are a bit easier to capture. Either we can use primary key field if it is auto incremented by 1 on each and every insert. We can capture the maximum value after each copy is done, and we can use that as baseline to do the subsequent loads. But when it comes to updates and delete, it is a bit complicated. We have to work with source teams in such a way that updates are captured using something called update timestamp. You have to have additional field where the insert time or update time is captured. And delete is a bit more complicated. If you physically delete the record in the source database, there is no easy way to capture that information to do certain action on the downstream applications such as HDFS. For that reason, quite often in the source systems, we might have to add additional flag, and we have to mark the data as deleted. It is called a soft delete. We will not delete the record from the database completely, but we will set a flag column to true if the record is deleted, and we might have to either create a trigger or refactor the source code to accommodate that change. And then when we capture the data, we'll capture that field also, and if the data is deleted, we will take certain action in the applications that load data to the downstream databases. So these are the things which you need to keep in mind when it comes to incremental import. Provided all those design decisions are made, now let us see the syntax about how the incremental imports can be done using Sqoop. The first thing is query. Already we have seen query earlier to get the data where we apply the transformations into the HDFS. And one of the transformation can be, you can just filter out the data based upon certain condition. Okay, so if I want to do the incremental import, I can just using query, I can just write the query like this. Okay, so here I am saying I'm trying to copy the data from orders, and I can say select star from orders where order date like 2013 percentage. Let's say this is the base import, and as we are using query, we have to set split by if we want the number of mappers to be true, to be more than 1, not true, to be more than 1. And before running this, let me delete this directory. Now I can copy this. Let's consider it as a baseline insert where we are copying all the data up to 2013 July. And we have seen that there are 68,883 records in this. As we are using query, we have to add this additional placeholder where dollar conditions, and then we have to use and then we can add whatever condition we want. For incremental loads, we typically use something like order date, which is nothing but a date field, to capture the data for the baseline, and then we will see how we can do it for the uh, subsequent loads as well. Let's assume that this import is done on day 1. On day 2, we should or whatever is the next interval, we should be able to capture the delta from the baseline and up to the point where you want to copy the data. If it is monthly, typically these incremental loads will be run on 2nd or 3rd of every month to capture the data of the previous month, and then data will be loaded. If it is daily, typically next day, day 2 will run the data for day 1. On day 3 we will run the load for day 2. On day 4 we will run load for day 3, so on and so forth. That's how we can capture the delta. Now let us see how many records are copied before getting into the next step. There are 30,662 records that are copied. Now let's say I want to capture the data for 2014 January. In this table orders, we have data from 2013 July 25th to 2014 July 24th. Okay, as we want to capture the data for January, I can specify like this. So like will compare with pattern. You should know SQL in this case. If you use like and if you specify percentage in the end, it will actually filter based on patterns. And also, as we are trying to load the data to existing directory, we have to add this additional flag called append. Then only it will work. So most of the incremental loads, if we use query or where condition, we use this append flag so that data can be copied to the existing directory. Otherwise, it will fail. So you can see the 5,908 records are copied. So one of the drawback using query is we need to specify split by, and even if there is a primary key on the tables, unless we specify split by, we will not be able to import. On a very big database, if there are hundreds of tables that needs to be copied like this, then identifying the field and then using that as part of the split by and all, it will complicate your logic to perform these uh, loads using the query. So for incremental imports, query might be okay with fewer tables, but if there are many tables, it might be a bit complicated to implement the logic. That being said, there is a clause called where. So here I am launching Chrome and going to Sqoop user guide, and you can check for before getting into the incremental import, official incremental import. Let me cover this where clause, which also can be used for incremental import. So the advantage of using where clause is we can still use the table. Okay, so instead of query and table are always mutually exclusive. I can still include the table clause orders, which means it can identify the primary key if it already exists. So I don't need to specify split by. For the incremental loads, append needs to be there, and then you have to specify where, and you can give the conditions as part of the where clause. Where clause also can be used to filter the data while copying into the downstream applications. One of the use case for where is to get the incremental loads based on a date field or primary key field. In this case, let's say I want to get data for 2014 February. Okay, and then I can copy and I can paste. Okay, it says output directory already exists. Okay, I know the problem. Here I do not have the backward slash or line break, because of which the append is not considered. Yeah, now I can run. Even when you check the boundary query, it is actually using the conditions you have specified as part of the where clause to get the boundary query. And then it have actually copied 5635 records. So this is how you can use where clause. So still there is one drawback between the incremental import or strategy for incremental import which we are trying to do, and the one which I'm talking about, which is nothing but official incremental import using Sqoop. Okay, these are the three arguments which you need to understand for more official and appropriate incremental import. These are primarily designed for incremental imports only. So why we cannot use only query? So if you use query or if you use where condition, we don't know up to what point we already copied the data. Okay, so we have to run eval query before the import, after the import, to check the values that needs to be passed to the where condition or the query, so that we can perform the load. Using eval, you can run any query to the source database. Either you might have to run eval query both prior to import and after the import, and you might have to use the values which is written by eval to automate the process for the incremental import. So those things are taken care using this approach. So the main difference between the prior approaches which I have covered so far and this one will be after performing the incremental import with these arguments, it will actually display the value of the field on which incremental import is being performed on the screen. So the maximum of the value till the point where the incremental import is done will be displayed on the screen. And you can read Sqoop provides an incremental import mode which can be used to retrieve only rows newer than some previously imported set of rows. And it supports two modes. One is append and the second one is last modified. Append is used for numeric fields where it is auto-generated using sequence or something, which is nothing but primary key. So if your source tables are insert only, and if your primary key is always incremented, you can use append, and then you can say whatever last value from where you want to read the data, and you have to give the column name, which is nothing but typically numeric field, so that it can fetch the data. You can also pass dates, but typically with append mode we use numeric field. And then if you have update timestamp, and if you want to capture data based on that, where updates are also done on the source database, then we can specify incremental mode to be last modified. Okay, so it supports both to append and last modified. Append is typically used on primary key fields on insert only tables. And last modified is used where updates are being done on the source table, and typically the column which will be passing as part of check column will be date field. And both of these things we have to specify the last value so that it can apply the greater than condition and get the data from there. So already we have copied data for 2013 and then 2014 January and 2014 February. Now let us try to use the approach of this approach and try to see how the incremental loads can be done. Okay, so here, so whatever you have specified as column in the where condition, you can say you can give that column name as part of check column. So check column. In this case, I want to use order date. And then incremental mode I want to consider to be append, because let's say we are only let's say orders is always insert only table for now. Okay, so incremental append. Okay, and then last value. So this one you have to capture as part of the last run, and then you have to add it here. So let's say last value as 2014 February 28. Okay, and from there it will actually read the data. And here we don't need to specify append, I guess. Let's see if it works. If it does not, we just need to add append. And you can see it here. It is actually checking for order date 2014 February 28th, and then till the max value. It did not just get it the March, till the 2014 July 24th value. It did not just pick 1 month, because we are trying to get all the data since the last load using the last value. That's why it applied this greater than condition, and it copied 26,678 records. And you can see incrementally is append, check column is order date, last value is now 2014 July 24th. So you have to capture this information somewhere, and you have to read it back while performing the next import. Also, if you use Sqoop job, I will not be covering this, but if you use this Sqoop job, it actually maintains this information by itself, and the next time it will automatically run using these values. Okay, this is another feature they have provided as part of the incremental imports. Very, very important. Even though you don't have much of a flexibility to update the data on the target locations in HDFS, still getting the delta is very, very important. And then we have to apply whatever logic we need before writing into the target locations. Okay, for the certification purpose, you don't need to worry about those things. Typically, it itself is a decent module where people have to work for quite some time to actually develop the complete Sqoop based solution to copy the data from source database to HDFS on regular basis. It's a complete module or framework which needs to be developed, and you need to understand all these features to make it as simple as possible, to make your development process as simple as possible.